conmigo. Thank you for being with me today. I'm very excited to do this 1 hour journey with you all, and I do have just a few polls so we can get a sense of who's in the space. Normally, I would like to be in person and sharing a room together, and since we are online, I'd like to just get a sense of who's in the room. I do want to do a quick reminder that this particular workshop is bilingual, so some of the slides are most of the slides have English statistics, but some of the words and the language and the stories I might use will jump around between English and Spanish. And I will do my best, voy a hacer lo mejor que puedo, to translate if I speak for a very long time in one language or the other. But I also want people to feel comfortable speaking in the language of their choice. So quiero que todos se sienten cómodos hablando en el idioma que deseen. And so before we get started here, first, welcome to Poderosa Voz, Centrada en mi poder, una exploración de presencia ejecutiva. I am going to ask for Maria's help to ask just a few polls. Maria, could you put the first poll up?
There it is. So for
awesome, thank you.
You can best describe the path that you are on. If you're aspiring to leadership position, emerging leader, so looking at 1 to 3 years, an experienced leader, 3 to 5 years, a seasoned leadership position, 5+ years or other. And so it looks like folks are starting to answer that. Currently, we have about 71% saying that they're aspiring to a leadership position, and it's shifting quite quickly. So we have now 60% aspiring to leadership, 25% emerging leader, and 8% experienced leader, 8% other. And so we'll leave that open for just a few more seconds. If you haven't gotten the opportunity to vote, please do so. But again, that changed quite quickly as people were doing that. So I'm going to go ahead and close that, Vanessa, and I'm going to share the results. So it looks like 58% of you are aspiring to a leadership position, 25% are emerging leaders, 8% are experienced leaders, and 8% are other. And Vanessa, let folks know if you want them to type in kind of what their experience is in the chat box, and I can read those out as well.
That sounds great. I think what we'll do is that just gives a good sense of sort of where most folks are at. If we could move on to the next poll, because I would like us to get into the content.
Great. So then here is the next one. Again, folks, if you can start voting, you'll see what best describes the sector you work in, if applicable. So community-based organization or nonprofit, public sector, for example, the government, private sector, academia or university, or other again. So we have about 92% of y'all who have voted. So far, it looks like 92% are coming from a community-based organization or nonprofit, and 8% from the public sector, like the government. So because most folks have already voted, I'm just going to give this a few more seconds at this point. And it's not changing much, so I'm going to go ahead and close that and share the results with folks. Again, it didn't change much from what I mentioned earlier, so about 92% community-based organization or nonprofit, and 8% public sector like the government. So I'm going to hide that one, and Vanessa will go ahead and share that third poll, which is what best describes the organizational position you hold at this time. So direct service, such as community-based advocate. Are you a coordinator, a supervisor or manager, a director, or other? And so those votes are coming in. Again, they're shifting quite quickly. We have about 77% of you all who have voted, and that looks like 70% direct service, such as community-based advocates, 20% coordinator, and 10% other. So I'm going to give that just a few more seconds as well. If you haven't voted, please do so. And it's not shifting very much. So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll, and I'm going to share it. And again, it didn't shift. It's about 73% direct service, 18% coordinator, and 9% other. So I'm going to go ahead and hide that and turn it back to you, Vanessa. Just really quickly, it looks like we have to restart the presentation, but turning it back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So let me just get this in the right view mode for all of us. And thank you for just taking a moment to let me know who's in the room. I will definitely share a little bit about myself, para que sepan la experiencia que traigo. So the experience that I have is also present in the room. Just a quick reminder for all of us. Please, if you can, grab some water, tea, coffee, a snack. If you have access to pen and paper, and as much as possible, please get yourself in a comfortable place. Take a large breath, respira profundo, and gracias por estar aquí. So again, si estuviéramos juntos, we would be having café and pan dulce and just, in a circle and listening to some music and be able to relax a little bit. So as much as possible, if you can create that space for yourself, please get up as you need to as well. These are just a couple slides that I wanted to share that are inspiring to me from the artist Frizz Kid. The first says, "May you blossom again when you are burnt out." And the next says, "May your softness stay light, may your hardness stay fierce." So I just want to give a little brief intro. I do have some time in the slides to share a little bit about my leadership journey. Just brevemente, soy uruguaya americana, so I'm the daughter of an immigrant. My father immigrated from Uruguay when he was 38 years old. I am a cohort member of the LEAP cohort through the Women of Color Network and CalCASA. I identify as a survivor and from many generations of surviving different forms of violence. And I actually had created this particular website as part, or this particular presentation as part of a Pay It Forward activity for the LEAP project last year. And I wanted to share it as much as I could with other people. So aquí tenemos nuestros objetivos. What I'm hoping we can do today is really just explore a little bit around executive presence in a way that allows us to honor our authentic selves, perhaps to release some of our fears on our path to leadership, explore a bit of facts and figures about Latinx community in the workplace, women of color in leadership, and some of those shared experiences that we all may have in this room, as well as to seek inspiration in community with aspiring and emerging leaders of color. So those are, they're big objectives, but I do think we can, even in this online platform, create some of that space. And this will be como plantar una semilla to begin to grow even more, that we can blossom into the kind of leaders that we hope to be. I'm going to start with a cuento that I really love. My tia gave me this book by Marcela Lechuga. The book is called Arriesgarse a Vivir, and there's a little story about bamboo and fern in it. The book is written in Spanish, so I'm going to read it in Spanish. It's a very short little story, and then what I'll do is just give a brief capture in English, not translate it word for word. And I find this story very inspiring as far as how to think of ourselves as leaders and be patient and gentle with ourselves. In a little bit, I will share my own journey, but I do believe that leadership is an ongoing journey. I don't know if you ever arrive fully. I think it's something that we cultivate inside ourselves, as well as cómo estar centrados en nuestros corazones, en los valores que tenemos, so centering ourselves in our heart and in our values. So I'm just going to share this little story. Ok, el helecho y el bambú. Un día decidí darme por vencido y renuncié a mi trabajo, a mi relación, a mi vida. Fui al bosque para hablar con un anciano que decían era muy sabio. ¿Podría darme una buena razón para no darme por vencido?, le pregunté. Mira a tu alrededor, me respondió. ¿Ves el helecho y el bambú? Sí, respondí. Cuando sembré las semillas del helecho y el bambú, las cuidé muy bien. El helecho rápidamente creció, su verde brillante cubría el suelo. Pero nada salió de la semilla de bambú. Sin embargo, no renuncié al bambú. En el segundo año, el helecho creció más brillante y abundante, y nuevamente nada creció de la semilla de bambú, pero no renuncié al bambú. En el tercer año, aún nada brotó de la semilla de bambú, pero no renuncié al bambú. En el cuarto año, nuevamente nada salió de la semilla de bambú, pero no renuncié al bambú. En el quinto año, un pequeño brote de bambú se asomó en la tierra. En comparación con el helecho, era aparentemente muy pequeño e insignificante. El sexto año, el bambú creció más de 20 metros de altura. Se había pasado 5 años echando raíces que lo sostuvieran. Aquellas raíces lo hicieron fuerte y le dieron lo que necesitaba para sobrevivir. ¿Sabías que todo este tiempo que has estado luchando, realmente has estado echando raíces? Le dijo el anciano y continuó. El bambú tiene un propósito diferente a el helecho. Sin embargo, ambos son necesarios y hacen del bosque un lugar hermoso. Nunca te arrepientas de un día en tu vida. Los buenos días te dan felicidad. Los malos días te dan experiencia. Ambos son esenciales para la vida, le dijo el anciano y continuó. La felicidad te mantiene dulce, los intentos te mantienen fuerte, las penas te mantienen humano, las caídas te mantienen humilde. Si no consigues lo que anhelas, no desesperes, quizás solo estés echando raíces. So that's a cuento popular that's in this particular book. So the story wasn't written by Marcela, but for those that maybe don't speak Spanish fluently, I do want to just share the heart of the story. And that is this person goes on this journey and meets a wise person, and this wise person tells them that when they planted the fern and the bamboo seeds never came up out of the ground, and instead of giving up on the bamboo, this person kept, taking care of both of the plants. And then one day the bamboo shot up through the sky 20 feet because all that time it had been taking time to make sure its roots were strong. And so I find that story to be very inspiring, because sometimes in our leadership path, first of all, there aren't a lot of opportunities for leadership. And so sometimes we feel this pressure that, if that opportunity is maybe like there, or we're working towards it, that we have to be doing it the same way as everybody else. And so this is sort of a reminder that however your journey is a beautiful journey and a valuable journey and important. So we're going to move forward, and let's see. I wanted, because we're not in the same room and we can't talk with each other, I wanted you to just picture in your mind, if you will, again, all of this being optional, so if you need to step away, that's completely okay, but just picture in your mind a leader, a hero, or a mentor that you admire or aspire towards. So this could be any kind of person. It could be in the field of work that you're in. It could be an artist or musician, someone who does social justice work in your community. So if you can just imagine, it could be a family member, someone that you really admire, that is a leader or hero, and write that word down or picture that word in your mind. And then try this. Try saying I am, and then put in that word that this other person that you admire embodies. So let's say for me, if the word I choose is poderosa, I'm going to practice saying I am poderosa. So if you can, and again, I won't know if you're participating because we're not in the same room, but if you can, just really think of that person that does inspire you and has these qualities, and see what it feels like. So I'm going to read a few affirmations like this, and I invite you to imagine yourself embodying those qualities. I am strong. I am poderosa. I am enough. I am magnetic. I am full of wisdom, sabiduría. I am compassionate. Soy única. I am driven. I am part of a community that believes in me. I am generous. I am a leader. And that is just a practice that, there's that dicho in English, fake it till you make it, right? Sometimes we get put in these situations that maybe we don't feel we're ready for. And I don't think it's so much about faking it as reminding ourselves of the power that we have inside of us. And sometimes in those moments, saying these affirmations can help us get through that situation. So as we move forward, we're going to get into a lot of the research that I did when I was developing this workshop, and I want to share, just so you have it, these really concrete facts and figures, and that's why I shared the citations, resources, so you can go back and read some of these articles if you're interested. So we're going to get into some of that, like research and statistics, in a moment, but I do want to share a little bit about what I called my TED Talk, which we did in the SLEEP, the Calcasa cohort. And I just want to share what led me to even create this workshop. And in full openness, like, lo que voy a compartir es un poco vulnerable, porque estoy compartiendo un poco de mi experiencia como líder y el trabajo que he hecho. And so I just want to take that moment to kind of share a little bit about myself, with the hope that you will perhaps see some connection with some of those feelings and those experiences, and feel less alone on your journey, and feel encouraged to keep going. So let me see. Okay, the slide is up. So I'm just going to share for a couple minutes that there came a point. So I've worked in the violence prevention field for about 16 years, and started out as a domestic violence advocate at a shelter in San Francisco. And that was many years ago, but that was where I started. And now in the last, it's been 4 or 5 years now, I've been in leadership positions, whether supervisor, manager at a culturally specific organization. And then the last few years, I moved over into the public sector, which is a very big change. And I had this realization when I was going through the LEAP leadership cohort, a feeling of, I would put on this blazer to go to work and, look the professional leader. And I started to feel like, was I wearing the blazer or was it wearing me? It started to feel like my blazer was almost like a heavy coat of armor. I would think about walking into rooms and these meetings that I needed to go into, that executive presence felt like it was about fitting into a bleached out professionalism, being held to white male standards of what that looks like, that I was compromising my authenticity. I was, bilingual, bicultural, but in a huge mainstream organization that only spoke English, code switching constantly, have a lot of empathy and different skills with 15 years in the field, doing a lot of public speaking as a supervisor, subject matter expert, with 4 generations of multiple forms of violence and trauma in my own life, and, lived experience as a child in a domestic violence shelter. So all those things were starting to kind of show up with me in a room. And I would walk into a room and I knew that I was in this big leadership position, and it would be a weight upon me. So I started to examine that. And if we were in person, you would see I did all these drawings about, visuals around this. But I started to feel very isolated in my leadership role. And when I thought about code switching, I was thinking, did I crack the code or did the code crack me? And realizing I was in a box in this large mainstream organization, and there were buzzwords around me all the time. I was having to do work on a large macro level, system level work, as well as a micro level, like helping out with the community directly, which is where I came into the work. And I was feeling like I wasn't sure if I could still locate myself. So I started to ask myself some really challenging questions, and these will be just some questions that I put out there, más como para reflexión, so that if these are any questions that maybe you may be feeling, I encourage you to kind of sit with those questions, porque a veces estamos en situaciones donde no nos sentimos que podemos ser quienes somos, right? So we feel like we can't really be ourselves, and when you do that for a while, it can really start to take a toll. And so these questions are really to kind of check in. These were questions that I started asking myself, I guess, like a year and a half ago. And so I'll share them with you. The questions are, is there room to be radical? How much of myself am I suppressing? What happens if I show up, if I take up space, if I redefine the space, if I walk away? What has code switching cost me? Did I break the code or did it break me? What scares me? What's the heavy burden? What's my plan B? What vision do I have for me? What do I value? What rituals center me? Who are my heroes? How do I heal? What gifts do I have to offer? And what do I need or want to grow? So, deep reflexiones that I started to do with myself and really dig into and do research. And más que nada, I came to this really powerful place where I realized that in order to be authentic, to be whole, to walk into a room and feel my essence, I really needed to connect with myself, with all my ways of healing, and that, excuse me, could be a range of connecting to music, to nature, naturaleza, poesía, danza, risa, cultura, amistad, to food, to speaking Spanish, to caring for others, to dressing in clothing that I felt good in. All of these things I started to identify and really make sure that I was building those things into my life every day instead of leaving it outside of the workplace. And that can be very challenging, but I realized that the cost of fragmenting my executive presence from the things that heal and make me whole was not a worthwhile cost. And I finally decided that my power suit, like esa ropa que nos ponemos para sentirnos con mucha confianza, that my power suit was actually my authenticity. And that maybe it wasn't going to work for everybody, but that was what I needed to do to be able to continue in the work. So I'm gonna, that's a lot of TED Talk, but I did want to give you a sense, because what we're doing in the next part of the presentation is really looking at, some pretty major estudios and research and analyzing it a little bit so that we can understand that some of these fears and things are not things that only we're going through. So there's nothing wrong with you if you're questioning or you're feeling unsteady on the path to leadership. But I want to put out a little space for any questions or comments. And Maria will help us. I think she's able to see those.
Great. So one of the questions/comments is, can we get the reflection questions in the follow-up? I didn't catch them all.
Oh, sure. I'm happy. I don't think I have them typed up, but Maria, if you remind me, I'm happy to type those up.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be sure to send those out in that email for sure.
What I have is I have them on a poster paper from when I've done the presentation in person in a workshop, but I'm happy to type them up onto a document.
Great, yeah. And then it doesn't look like there's other questions or comments coming in.
Okay.
So again, feel free to type those in as those questions come up, and we'll get those to Vanessa.
Great, thank you. And so as we get ready to kind of dive in, we're going to dive into some of these statistics and what is executive presence. I do want to share like kind of a funny story that happened to me somewhat recently when I was in the process of a job search. And I was doing an online interview where, you know, it's the camera looking at you. And I made this really intentional decision where I was, you know, I had a blazer on and like my favorite lipstick and like, you know, my sharp little outfit that I wanted to wear. But I made this really intentional decision to put on some of my favorite earrings. And they're these big, beautiful, giant earrings that I got when I was visiting my family in South America, in Uruguay last year. So I put these earrings on very intentionally, and I decide, you know, this is me expressing my authenticity, and maybe it's not traditional, but this is me. And I get on the call, and I have, you know, I'm starting to be interviewed by this white man who's conducting the interview, and at some point he says, you know, those are really cool earrings, but they're making a lot of sound against the microphone. Like I can't hear you very well. So it was a very interesting experience because I had to, like, in order to be heard, I took off my earrings in the middle of this interview on the video. And it was actually very practical advice that I was given by this person, which was that, you know, this piece of jewelry I was wearing was actually like hitting the microphone and making it hard for him to hear me. But it was also very symbolic, and I really reflected on it afterwards around, you know, these choices that we make, how to present ourselves in a room and how no siempre encajamos, right? We don't always fit into spaces. But in that case, it's advice that now I think about. Like right now, I'm not wearing my long earrings because I want you all to be able to hear me. So just wanted to share that. So this is really just for you. We have a poll that you're welcome to participate in if you like, or, you know, if you don't feel comfortable answering the poll, that's totally okay. But these are actually from when I've done this workshop in the past. These are from the feedback that I got from what people were experiencing. So when I've done this in the past, there were about 30 of us in a room. So if you're comfortable, if you could just check any of the ones, any of the fears that you may have experienced related to your path to leadership.
Great, so it looks like people are voting. We have about half of folks that have voted. We have 100% of people are sharing that they have experienced fear of failure, being able to meet expectations. 58% fear of not fitting in, 50% fear of exhaustion, 50% fear of never finding my authenticity, and 42% fear of losing my connections to my community. So about 81% of you have voted. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share it with you. So it looks like 92% shared fear of failure, 54% fear of not fitting in, 46% fear of exhaustion, 54% fear of never finding my authenticity, and 38% fear of losing my connection to my communities. So I'm going to go ahead and hide that poll and turn it back over to you, Vanessa.
Great, and I will go back in, and I'm sorry that for some reason it kicks me out whenever we switch over, so lo siento por eso. Deme un momento. I'm just going to move us forward back to the slide that we were on. There we go. Okay, so I just really appreciate everyone sharing that with me. And, you know, the reason I ask those questions is because I want us to see en un espacio de comunidad que no estamos solos en eso. that, you know, some of the fears that have come up, I'll go back, include, you know, other things that I didn't put in the poll that people shared with me, is fear of being stabbed in the back, of betrayal, you know, of being an introvert, not knowing if that fits in, of privilegio, of misusing power. So, you know, I want people to, que todos sentimos que ese miedo, that's normal. That's okay to feel that. And it's okay to feel that and still like step forward into something if you feel like in your heart que eso es lo que tú quieres hacer. So it's okay to kind of have a little bit of that conflict and that fear and that miedo, and all of us go through that. So we're going to look at some of these statistics that I want to share. And again, I've shared the resources with you so you can actually read the original reports of all of this. So regarding repression of authenticity, more than 3 out of 4 Latinos, so 76%, expend energy repressing parts of their personas in the workplace. They are covering or downplaying who they are, modifying their appearance, their body language, their communication style, and their leadership presence. So that is a huge percentage of us, you know, and I don't know if everyone on the call identifies as Latino, Latinx, but of those of us that do, that's a large percent of repression of authenticity. And here's another quote that stood out to me. And therein lies the rub. To be seen as leaders, Latinos must exude authenticity, yet at the same time, they must conform to executive norms that have been defined by white men. And so that one was the question that I really was grappling with over, you know, about a year and a half ago, when I started to really, you know, pensar en estas cosas and really think about how was that impacting me in my role. And so I share that with you all. We're going to move forward to a few more. Let me find it on my slide because I have a paper version and I don't want to change the view that you all have. Okay, so how we show up and why we sometimes choose not to. Latinas who behave assertively risk being seen as angry or emotional, even when they reported they were not angry, they just weren't deferential, so they just weren't neutral. Nearly 60% of Latinas surveyed reported a backlash against expressing anger. And these were some quotes that people from some of these studies shared, and you can read the studies later. I don't feel safe sharing information that might later be used against me. It's ingrained in us from birth, a systems analyst explained. Don't make waves, don't ask for favors, just do your job. And finally, even if you have the paper, you still jump higher because you've got to be Superwoman. You have to put this S on and fly around to even be accepted. So those are really powerful quotes to me that I related to. In my case, I started to be at a level of leadership where most people around me had masters and I did not. I haven't gone on to get my graduate degree for a few different reasons. And so I started to feel like when I would take a new leadership position, even though I had all these years of experience in the field and, you know, solid relationships and all of these things, I would sit at a table and look around and realize that I was the person in the room that didn't have that paper, that estampa, right? But I still felt like I needed to prove myself above and beyond. And so that's a lot of information and statistics to kind of get us thinking. So before we go on to even more breaking down what is executive presence, I wanted to leave a space for any questions or comments.
Yeah, we did have one comment come in after the poll on fears that folks experience, and they mentioned, can I also add fear of not being the right person for the job, that there is someone who can do it better?
Absolutely, yes. That is, I think that's a very relatable fear or feeling like there's so many ways, so many angles to that, absolutely. Very relatable. So before we move forward to the next slides, does anyone have any questions or comments about some of those studies that we looked at?
So I'm going to give just a little bit for folks to type in, but so far no one has, just as an FYI, but definitely type that in if you have any of those questions or comments.
Great. We'll wait like another moment or so, and then we'll move forward. El tiempo está volando. We've got our about 20 minutes left, and I think that's a perfect amount of time to do what we have left. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move us to the next slide. And so this is this concept, executive presence, that you might hear about a lot, or even if you don't hear about it a lot, we kind of know what some of those studies are referring to about what that's supposed to look like, right? And my hope is that we start to think about what is executive presence as we define it, not just as the world around us defines it. It's very important to understand sort of the foundation of what something is defined by, but then to bring our authenticity to that and maybe even turn it inside out and darlo un nuevo perspectivo. So if you'll dig into different articles around executive presence, they describe it as being made up of these three things, which I will break down a little bit. If we were in a room together, we would be in small groups. And that is gravitas, communication, and appearance. And so to break that down a little bit, so the first area, which is listed as almost the most important of these three, according to these different studies, is gravitas. So 79% of that is really confidence and grace under fire, decisiveness, showing teeth, integrity, speaking truth to power, emotional intelligence, reputation and standing, vision, and charisma. And then followed by that, making up executive presence, communication, so how we speak, great speaking skills, ability to command a room, assertiveness is seen as a value, but then again, that can, depending on our positionality of how we present to the world, assertiveness can be interpreted, can turn against us, right? From those past studies we saw, as well as appearance, how you look. And I'm sharing this quote. This is from Nelly Galan, that wrote a book, Self-Made, that I find really inspiring, that I recommend if anyone wants to be inspired by a Latina entrepreneur who's trying to encourage others to make their own way. One of her quotes was, "Think like an immigrant. Immigrants don't subscribe to magical thinking. They tend to be more resilient and determined to bounce back from setbacks and to do a lot with a little, because they understand that uncertainty is a part of life. They understand the self-made mindset out of necessity." And so if you do get a chance to read Nelly Galan's book, Self-Made, it's very powerful. And so kind of moving on to some ways that we can think about executive presence, and the research that I did, ways that we can build up executive presence. One of the things that I read about was how organizations need to demystify executive presence, foster a culture of sponsorship, and change the face of leadership. And so that whole culture of sponsorship, what that means is don't just like assign someone a mentor, which, we're lucky if we get a mentor at all, I would say. But like la idea de sponsorship es más que nada to, it's above and beyond. It's almost like a super mentor, like someone that has connections, and not necessarily dentro de tu organización, but someone that is there for you, that will connect you to the right people and kind of give you really deep support on your journey over a long period of time. And it's said that Latinos with sponsors are 42% more likely to be satisfied with their career progression than Latinos without sponsors. I will say that most people that I know who are leaders of color, women of color leaders, myself included, don't have a sponsor. So please don't feel, bad if you don't, because I would say la mayoría de nosotros y nosotras, depending on how you identify, we don't have access to a sponsor. We've never been connected. It's more likely that we've kind of had to make our own way in community with people on the same journey like us, supporting each other. And here's some other keys to resilience is that emotional intelligence, authenticity, and agility, so that flexibility that Nelly Galan was referring to. And these are a couple interesting statistics that I think are important when we think about lo que requiere ser líder a veces, what's required to be a leader sometimes in work culture. So 84% of Latinos say they aspire to be healthy in their lifetimes, and 37% would turn down a promotional opportunity if they thought it would reduce time with their children or loved ones or their commitment to their communities. I think that's a very powerful statistic that can show where some cultural values are. And again, not saying that everyone would feel this way, but just based on this particular study that was found that if a leadership position was going to completely take over someone's life and you could no longer serve your community and your family and loved ones, we might not take the position. So important to kind of see que no estamos solos o solas en eso. So that is a lot of information as well. And before we move on to sort of do a little bit more reflection through some polls, I wanted to ask if anyone has questions or comments around some of those studies and that material.
So again, so far we don't have any questions or comments coming in, but feel free to type in and we will get those questions answered. One did just come in. Can you expand of what you mean by agility?
Absolutely. So agility kind of referring, it's sort of like that flexibility in that quote that Nelly Galan was talking about around being able to maybe be in a situation, see it from multiple perspectives, or be able to change situations and como estar en una situación y poder sobrevivir la situación o cambiar la situación and be very like nimble, like almost like a cat, That's what I think about con la palabra agility, is just like ways that we can cultivate that is, I think as emerging leaders, a lot of times you almost get forced to cultivate that agility because you're constantly being thrown into new situations with very little training or very little, no hay nadie ahí ayudándote. You're often just like in it, figuring it out. And so that agility starts to become a really big strength that you can rely on. It's almost like the way I think about it is, once you learn how to do something really well, let's say it's montar bicicleta or cooking your favorite meal, you can do that thing so well no matter what's going on around you. And you know that you're confident that, that's going to come out right, that you're going to be able to ride that bicycle no matter what. And same thing, I think, with agility, con cultivar esa habilidad. Once you have time and time again gone through challenging situations and survived them, you start to sort of, doesn't mean you're not stressed out by it, but you know that you've proved to yourself in the past you can get through it, you're flexible, you're adaptable, and you've gotten through it before. And so it's almost like it gives you this superpower. I think that's how I think about it. But again, there's more than one way to think about all of these concepts. So that's just my particular perspective. Hopefully that helps.
Great. Thank you, Vanessa. Another question as far as, do you have any advice for how to find a sponsor or to have that conversation with a mentor in one's life? And what does sponsoring look like beyond just a regular mentor?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because I remember when we did this in this larger group, when I was doing this workshop, we were all looking around, we're like, I don't have a sponsor, do you have a sponsor? You know, like none of us had sponsors. And so it was like this, you know, mythical creature that I read about. And what I suggest, and this is also like Nelly Galan somewhere in, I think it's in her book, Que nos dice esto, but she said to have like adopt mentors. Like sometimes we're waiting for like a formal mentor to adopt us. And she's kind of like, be a little more aggressive about it. And also you can adopt a mentor that you may never even meet in your life, but it's someone that you follow closely, and that you, let's say you're walking into a meeting and you're like, oh, no me siento bien hoy, like, estoy estresada, no sé si voy a poder hacer esto, you know, you're just stressed out, you don't know if you're going to pull it off. You can channel that person's energy and say, I'm going in there with Nelly Galan's energy, you know, or whoever is this person that brings you strength. So I think that's, you know, one way to do it that I've started to think about, even in the moment, if I don't feel that I have that power within me, to channel it from other people that I love and that have that. And then also to not be afraid to ask. That's not something for me that comes very easily. Like I'm not used to asking for help. I'm used to just figuring it out. But a lot of times when you ask someone, you know, that you look up to, hey, like, you know, I really admire you. I'm really looking to like learn from a leader like you. Can we meet for coffee? Can we, you know, talk through some of these things? Do you know anybody, maybe outside of the organization, that would be willing to work with an emerging leader? And I think it's actually a really beautiful and powerful opportunity. On a personal level, lo que yo he empezado a hacer, just even, you know, I consider myself still an emerging leader. I've only been in leadership positions about 5 years. And I've started to do that for young people that have come across in my life, where, you know, I don't pretend to have it all figured out, but like young people that are specifically young women of color that I've been working with that are on their path and have a lot of questions. And I just go out to lunch with them and like talk through their challenges and like what's, you know, what are your dreams? What are you working towards? And really building that can be a very beautiful experience. So I would say if you have someone in your community or even with technology now that you can connect with, you know, on a regular basis, maybe take that chance and ask them, you know, hey, like, would you be willing to, you know, connect with me like once a month for like 30 minutes and I'll take you out for coffee, or, you know, build that relationship and push yourself a little bit to ask for that help if you identify someone that could offer that to you. I will say when I did the LEAP, the leadership cohort, we were spread out across the nation, and we would once a month meet with Maya Coleman, our amazing mentor, and just like sit and look at each other on the video and talk and laugh and be real. So even if you don't have this like formal leadership cohort, you know, you can create it. Identify a couple people and be like, hey, can we meet? And just support each other, you know, of course with confidentiality and not no más para chisme, and to like, that can be dangerous when you get in a relationship where it's just like negative focused around chisme in the workplace. So I think it's like finding those supportive people that are going to lift you up, and not just focus on negative, like, you know, toxic workplace stuff, but help you work through it. So that's a long answer, I guess. I will, if it makes you feel better, I will say that out of 30 of us in a room of emerging and aspiring leaders, none of us felt that we had access to a sponsor. And the sponsor would be the kind of person that would not only meet with you and give you advice, but would like actually connect you and put themselves out there with, you know, put their name on the line to stand up for you, to look out for you, and to bridge you to new connections and opportunities. That's sort of like this next level support.
Great, thank you, Vanessa. And it looks like other questions have come in, but again,
okay, great.
Type those in as you have them.
Okay, so no more questions. So I'm going to move us forward. I know we have, I think, about 6-7 minutes left, which is perfect. So we do have, I did want to give us a chance. For me, I'm a very hopeful person. I really believe that even when things are challenging, that through community and through self-reflection and through self-love and really building ourselves up, I really think we can make powerful impacts in our communities. Pero no que va a ser fácil. Like I will not lie on this webinar and say that it's easy to do that. I think it can be very challenging. But I do want to end on some of this self-reflection that allows us to think about what are some of the ways that you or leaders you admire can cultivate executive presence. And please just check any of those that apply. And again, these come from things I've heard from other people and from myself, and any of those that apply. And I'll read more as well.
Great. So people are diligently voting. We currently have about a quarter of you all who have participated. So it looks like about 75% have said humility with thoughtful intention around impact of actions, 30% delegating power and collaborating, 80% lifting up others and create more leaders, 60% community comes first, and 50% model self and communal care. So we have about 61% of you that have voted at this time. We'll give it just a few more seconds if you all want to go ahead and vote. And then I will close it here just in a bit. It's fluctuating just a little bit. So we have about 72% of you all who have voted. So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll and then share it with you all. So it looks like 86% chose humility with thoughtful intention around impact of actions. 36% said delegating power and collaborating. 71% said lifting up others and create more leaders. 57% said community comes first, be accountable, and 43% said model self and communal care. So I'm going to hide that and open up that other poll.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you all want to go ahead and vote on that, we'll have that open to give you an opportunity to select all that apply on that second question of how can you cultivate executive presence while honoring your authenticity? So speak truth with passion and humility, be vulnerable through transparency, be courageous, out of comfort zone, even with self-doubt, network and seek mentors, and nurture passions outside of work and cultivate future plans. So about a third of you all have voted at this point. 100% have said speak truth with passion and humility. 78% be vulnerable through transparency. 89% be courageous. 56% network and seek mentors. And 70% nurture passions outside of work. So we have currently about 65% of you who have voted. Again, we'll leave it open here for just a few more seconds, and then I'll share the final responses. So it's shifting just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and close that and share the poll. So 93% said speak truth with passion. 71% said be vulnerable through transparency. 79% said be courageous. 57% said network and seek mentors. And 64% said nurture passions outside of work and cultivate future plans. I'm going to go ahead and hide that and turn it back over to you, Vanessa.
Okay, great. And I will pull up, we just have 2 more slides, so this will be our last time having to pull this up. I really appreciate everyone just answering some of these polls, because I know it's a lot, it is a lot to think about, and it's things that we already know and experience. So I just appreciate you all And those are just some of the things we can do. I was limited to, I could only put 5 choices, so I tried to put the ones that came up a lot for people in the past. So I'm going to invite us, and again, this is very much optional. If we were in the room together, there would be a little fake fire up on the wall, and we would write down our fears and put them. So what I'm going to ask, we just have a couple minutes here, is just to consider one of your fears around your path to leadership. And even if it's just for a second, even if it's just 1 hora, 2 horas el día for the week, or for the coming year when you're setting out like your path for yourself, I'm going to invite you to let that fear go. Suéltalo al fuego. And see how that feels, even if you can only do it for a short period of time before it's there with you again. And I want to share this particular quote by the poet Young Pueblo. And it is, there is a tendency to doubt your growth in the midst of a big leap forward. Hold steady and allow yourself to bloom. And that is the end of this particular Poderosa Voz online pop-up workshop. At the end of the PowerPoint, there are a lot of articles that you can look up, so you can read more if something really interested you or resonated, or you feel like you want to read more. I wanted to provide that as well. And I just want to dar agradecimiento para todos que compartieron su tiempo, su tarde conmigo. It's really an honor and for me to just be in this space con ustedes, and it's very powerful. And even though I can't see you all, please know that I believe in you. I believe in your power and your intention. And this whole community, all of us, we're here for each other, and we want to see each other flourish on our path to leadership. And so that, I think we are at time. I am going to show, just so you can see, these are some of the references that you'll have access to afterwards. And again, gracias por estar conmigo.
Great. Thank you so much, Vanessa. Just a few things that came up after that last poll. Someone added a few things to the comment section about personal accountability, admitting to their mistake, and being open about their learning process for how to cultivate that executive power. So just wanted to go ahead and share that.
Awesome. I love that. Yep. I'm big on that. And admitting, like, when we don't know something, right? Not always really, really being careful about who's in the room, but like, if it's okay to, if we're asked to do something, be like, you know what, let me get back to you on that. And to really honor that we are going to make mistakes, and to be open about that, and that you're a leader moving forward, and you will continue to make mistakes, right? So that's really powerful. Thank you.
Great. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to type those in, or any comments. Currently, we don't have any questions coming in. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with folks before we wrap up, Vanessa?
I think just, again, agradecimiento por su presencia, and just a reminder that the fear is normal. As you are pursuing your dreams, sometimes it is the things that we want the most are the things that are going to scare us the most. And really seeking out that community, whether it's locally or across with technology, finding that community that can really lift you up is another powerful way to not experience the isolation. So I wish everybody a beautiful day, and I hope that this year brings you and the communities you serve just peace and growth and opportunities.
Wonderful. And we at CICASA particularly, and I'm sure the folks on the webinar today, we just want to thank you for you spending this time with us and agreeing to do this webinar of this wonderful Poderosa Voz pop-up workshop. We're so excited that you were able to be here with us, and we hope to be working together again soon. And so with that, I just want to go ahead and wrap up the webinar. Any questions that you might have that maybe you didn't get a chance to type in or that weren't answered, you can feel free to send me an email or send an email to Vanessa, and she'd be happy to answer those. Look out for that email, like I mentioned at the top of the webinar, about the email containing copies of all the materials. So those handouts that are there on the right-hand side, a copy of the PowerPoint, and then a link to where the recording of this webinar will be. We also want to invite you all to our webinars for next month. We will be having two, one on May 8th and one on the 15th, from folks over at the Laboratory to Combat Human Trafficking and the Colorado Department of Human Services. They're going to be talking to us about human trafficking of youth and young adults in Colorado, as well as human trafficking of adults in Colorado. So that's May 8th and May 15th, respectively. We hope to see you all there. And then also just a reminder to fill out the survey that is going to be coming to you in that email. Those are very helpful for us, again, to make sure that we're providing the information that you're needing and wanting in your communities. So thank you all again for attending the webinar, and we hope to see you on another one soon.